Welcome to Oldsmobile 455. If you've been keeping up with our videos, we're working on this 68 Javelin, and we ended up mounting a 70 hood on a 68 Javelin, did some modifications to it so it would fit, and wanted to make the scoop functional. And they give you all this stuff. I mean, they don't give it to you, you gotta buy it. These little filler panels, and we made our own little trim pieces. But if you look underneath here, there isn't much space to play with. We're gonna take the air that rushes in through here, and this void here will be a pressurized point at speed. And we want that air to get into here. So we have to make a base. We'll be copying the same stuff that Chevrolet, Oldsmobile, Pontiac, Mopar, they all did it to have Ram air. So we're gonna have to make this base wider, and then we have to have a hole cut out the size of, bigger than that, what is that, 14 inch? We'll make it probably 16 inch so the air has a way to get around, so that we'll have to put a ring around here to stiffen it up, and then we'll have to make a seal that seals the hood to this, and then paint it black and you won't even notice it.
These are reproductions, and there was a Y connector that went behind here, and it was super restrictive. And then it went to air cleaner there, and I think if you go back in the videos you can see what it looked like, but we ended up selling it because it was so narrow and restrictive.
And I'm just going to mark these spots where the air cleaner is, and we're going to go north, south, east, west. Then we'll close the hood. I'm transferring the lines that the air cleaner is somewhere in here, and we want it. We have to find exactly where the air cleaner is, or when we close the hood, we're not going to be making this base for the air cleaner so huge because there's limited space. So we got to make that hole in our metal in the same location as we want it when the hood closes down, that it seals perfect. You'll see the screw that was the original setup on the stock 70 AMX with ram air was mounted right there. We'll try to use as many of the original holes for mounting this to it so that we don't wreck it. Well, when I ended up just measuring across back here, and then I measured across back there, I'm at a different location, and I took this hunk of metal and cut it, and it didn't work out like that. It needs to be way wider to cover up these holes that are in these support, all the stiffeners that are underneath the hood. So this is useless. We're gonna have to start off with a whole new bigger piece, probably 3 inches bigger. So in order to get this thing to seal properly, we have to go a lot wider. My panel that I made was too narrow, so you'll start from scratch. So I'll make a new pattern, and we're going to go all the way out to the furthest part of the edge, cover up a lot of holes that my piece didn't cover up. So we'll just take this pattern, we just took a bunch of paper and taped it together, and get it to where it covers up all those spots. I got this magic marker. I'm just rubbing against here. See, this is what's going to be the problem. This is a higher level than what this is, so we're going to have to, I think, either use screws and pull the metal down. As you can see. So when we traced out all these points of where that was, and we double checked just with the tape measure and measuring the hood, we found the center point of where that stud would be for the air cleaner, and we're going to have to cut a hole so that the air coming through will then be dumping down into that air cleaner. When you go to buy aluminum, it's kind of expensive. And if we screw it up, it's an expensive mistake. This little piece of metal was $75. And I almost screwed it up because I was still thinking 16-inch air cleaner. And then he says, we went with a smaller air cleaner because we had to worry about the tipping of the hood and closing. And we were going to need something when we build off the air cleaner base and go up. We're going to just be putting this like pipe insulation, so it's foam and you get a seal. There's got to be something to press against. If I made the hole too big, it wouldn't be sealing up. So luckily he stopped me before I ended up cutting too big of a hole. So now we're just down to a 13-inch hole, and then our sealant will have something to seal against. So now you're getting the gist of this idea of what we're doing. You can see how this panel was made, and you realize this hood slopes down and this is totally flat. So if we want to screw this and mount it, you're going to see that there is a distance here. And if you take the tape measure and you measure it, it's a 1/2 inch. So as we make this base, the ring in the front is going to have to be a 1/2 inch higher than the back. And then we're going to have to put that foam around it. That'll give us some give. But even though we're screwing this all the way down, you'll see there's a gap back here. So we're going to have to make some little sides, and he's going to have to weld them from this point to the back. You see we have a few screws in this thing right now. It's getting toward the end of the day. And he's going to put some more in here, but you can see how rigid this is. So it's not going to be all flimsy. It's going to be able to seal up against this. You always want to see what us guys that are messing around with cars are doing, and we're modifying one thing. You'll never guess what happened. The radiator cap is hindering going all the way down. So we put grease on it. You can see where it was hitting. So in order for us to keep this flush and look good, we don't want to have a hole there. We're going to take and drop the radiator down. And we were planning on moving this anyway. We're going to make a whole new different bracket here, and then making a different shroud that goes around. It'll all be made out of aluminum. So now we know how much further down the radiator has to sit, because we can see how far the hood doesn't want to close. If you'll notice, the radiator cannot go any more forward because this core support, I mean, we're right up against it. But you could come down and the radiator will be exposed, making it more vulnerable. But this car has a lot of clearance. It's not like it's a real lowrider. So in order to have that thing work up there, we gotta, you only got so much real estate. This will probably have to come down at least probably a 1/4 of an inch lower than this thing.
What we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this cap with this release lever. And just put a regular old cap rated at the same PSI on it. Try to get a little clearance there. I should point out we want this to be the highest point. I think we're only going to have to go down like 1/2 inch or an inch or something like that. So I'll probably be trimming this hose to bring that down also and keep this highest point to purge air. Looks like if I take it down about 7/8 of an inch, most of it will still be protected a little bit by this lip. This will be hanging down a little bit, but it should clear the hood. So I'm going to loosen it now. We'll close the hood and then push it up and see how it looks down here. Alright, we moved it down. Just kind of sitting on the fan right now. What looks to be about 7/8 of an inch. And I think when we service this, I'm going to go ahead and tack those bushings onto the radiator so they don't fall out. And then we're also going to weld a strip in here to try to seal it up a little bit better. I left these braces in also to see if our sheet metal hits on them. So let's see if the hood shuts. Still hitting on something. I can make a new bolt. It's only got an 1/8 inch lip on it. Try to clearance that. Yep, it's that brace bolt. Probably about a 1/4 inch of play there. So I can't even move this hole up an inch the way it is. I'm gonna have to add some metal on here first. I welded it on both sides, grounded flat, because our bushing is gonna be up in this area. And we need to keep this spacing. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up that hole in there, and I'm actually gonna tack these on to the radiator, and then we'll have a strip in between them to try to help seal it up. Hopefully this thing fits. I've opened these up from 5/16 to 1/2 inch to give a little extra play. We got our bushings kind of where we think they're supposed to go, so we're going to tack them in and then we'll be test fitting this. Alright, our first 2 bushings are tacked in there, and it's looking like it's probably where we're going to need it. It's about level with this lip here.
We're at a point in this construction of the vehicle where you go 1 step forward, 2 steps back. We wanted this thing to be really taut so that when the hood was closed and the gasket was sealing, that it would have a firm surface to seal against. And we went with 1/8 thick aluminum. Piece this big, aluminum, 1/8 inch thick, you didn't think it was going to be that much. But now when you lift the hood or even pull it down to close it, the hood weighs a lot more. So we're going to less than half, 60 thousandths inch thick aluminum. And because there's enough screws, it's real taut, we won't need this thick of metal and we'll lighten up the hood. I'm putting tape down at that lower edge. And I'm just tracing this out, and I'll cut it, and then I'll stick that tape on the piece of aluminum and cut it out. In order to keep this thing flat so our stuff seals to it, and this is thinner now, you could pull this down. We're going to put little sides on it where there's an air gap, and he's going to have to weld that together.
Now that this radiator has been moved 1 inch, we got to move the shroud 1 inch. Getting pretty tight to the upper hose there, but I think we'll be okay.
So in all, we took off about 2 inches off this hose, made this lay, a lot more flatter, go down, trying to keep that, trying to get this to be the highest point. All right, so you can see that the radiator is now level with the core support. This is hanging down. But this car sits really high. It's not like his Trans Am where you're scraping the ground. Closest thing to the ground are the headers. 1 step closer on the Ram air induction, and there's a gap, that's between this high point and this high point, so we had to make sides, which had to be welded. And now I'm going to sand these out, put a texture on this whole thing, kind of like a Scotch-Brite or something, so paint will stick to it. And we're going to seam seal it. The whole thing was sanded down, tried to knock down some of the big gouges. 150 down to 120. Plugs, so any of the air coming in isn't going to escape out these holes. So we're just going to do 4 little tacks and everything's going to be seam sealed in. just in the process of drilling, there's gonna be little filings in it from the drill mess. And it gets all in there, so we gotta take it off, vacuum it out, blow it out, whatever you can do, because after this is closed, and you don't want pieces floating around there. Nothing that drives you crazy more than a rattle. So we're gonna lift this off. We've got the place where the seam sealer is gonna be able, you know, you can just wipe it, and then when we peel the tape off, it'll just be a bead that's the same concentric or consistent thickness. But we're gonna lift this off and put a bead underneath so you don't get rattling. So we're gonna lift this off, put a bead there, then we'll put this down, put the screws in, some might squish out, and then we'll finish off that. That's it for the night. I'm putting this, oh, it's hard. Is this from before? Is the old one?
That's the old tube, yeah.
Oh, that's difficult. It's taking everything I got. I'm squeezing with all my might. Well, you wouldn't want me caulking your bathtub. This stuff dried faster than you can imagine. You start getting it on your fingers and then you can't do anything because you're making more of a mess. But you see that it's a consistent edge. If we did it right now, a little rag with some acetone, we could clean it, but it's gonna be primed. You won't notice it.
Got it all sealed up.
What we're doing is just scuffing this up. When we did the seam sealers, some of it came over and it looks ragged. So you gotta get this edge cleared off, and we're getting ready for paint. We gotta really vacuum it, blow it off, get all the dust out, and we'll prime it. Once it's primed, then we can put it back on the truck, on the car, and then we gotta make the base for the air cleaner to meet up with this.
How are the conditions today?
Windy. Cold and windy. Not ideal.
Still all paint. Anything else you need primed?
Better too much than too little.
Thanks for spraying my finger. Looks pretty good.
What happens a lot of times, I try to use it, and then all of a sudden you run out and you're only halfway, and then you got a dry spell.